Red Squadron is arguably the most famous squadron for the entire life of the Rebel Alliance. This group was typically composed of 12 pilots in 12 T-65 X-Wings. The members changed over the squadron's active years, and at times they even flew other kinds of ships. Even the typical number of pilots, 12, at any given time could fluctuate. The Red Squadron we're most familiar with was formed under General Jan Dodana's Masasi Group, one of the largest cells in the Rebel Alliance. I'm going to break down all the known members of Red Squadron that I could verify in canon by the title that they held in the group. Red Leader, or Red 1, actually goes back to the Clone Wars. Commander Monk, a clone scuba trooper who served under General Jedi Master Kit Fisto. Monk was Red Leader during the Battle of Mon Cala. He led scuba troopers in the waters of Mon Calamari, rather than piloting starfighters in open space. Obi-Wan Kenobi, known for being a phenomenal Jedi Master with more accomplishments than I have time to list here. Kenobi, who's also known for not loving spaceflight by the time we catch up with him in the prequel trilogy, did hold the call sign of Red Leader during the Battle of Coruscant in 19 BBY. During the Galactic Civil War, Samala Leone held the position of Red Leader for a brief time in 0 BBY. Samala led 3 other X-Wing pilots in Red Group to assist Extraction Team Bravo in recovering Jyn Erso, a person of interest for the Rebellion as she had ties to the rumored construction of the Death Star. Garven Dreis. Dreis led the group for the Battle of Scarif and the battle against the Death Star. He was killed in action by Darth Vader himself. Dreis was well liked by the men he served with and remembered fondly after he died. For a full transmission all about Dreis, check the description. Arul Narar took over after Dreis' death. He asked Luke Skywalker and Wedge Antilles to remain with the squadron and went out of his way to let them know that they would not be getting special treatment for their roles in destroying the Death Star. He led the squadron in a battle with the Imperial forces over Vrogas Vas that he described to Alliance Command as one of the worst cullings of starfighter pilots he had ever seen. Nara was killed in the Imperial attack on Hoth Echo Base. Wedge Antilles, who's possibly the most famous Red pilot, of course, aside from Luke Skywalker, who also held the most positions. Wedge was Red Leader twice, Red 2, and Red 3. He's one of only 2 Red Squadron members to survive the assault on the Death Star and served in countless battles. For a full video all about Wedge, check the description. Luke Skywalker was a naturally gifted pilot due to his strong connection with the Force, even with no training. He was a late addition to Red Squadron as the Death Star loomed. His childhood friend Biggs Darklighter, already a member of the team, vouched for him and secured his spot. I'm sure most of us know, Luke fired the shot that ultimately destroyed the battle station. Skywalker was made Red Leader for a brief time during the battle at Elysia. Do I really need to go into Luke Skywalker anymore in this transmission? After Skywalker's brief stint as leader, lead passed back to Wedge Antilles. Red 2 during the Galactic Civil War. The first pilot I could find was only named Jory. Not much is known about this X-Wing pilot. He had the call sign in 0 BBY and assisted in the extraction of Jyn Erso in the Wobani system. I assume he died in combat since the call sign was passed to Wedge Antilles not long after this, and Jory's name never shows up again. Kaiser Salm. After the evacuation of Hoth in 3 ABY, Kaiser was recruited into the squadron by Wedge. He flew with Wes Jansen against pirates who were waiting at a rebel rendezvous. Kaiser's older brother, Horton, would serve as Grey Leader in the Battle of Endor. During the time of the Resistance and the War against the First Order, Sarah Bell's son was part of Red Squadron. They were mobilized against Starkiller Base. Bell's son was a green-skinned humanoid who was killed in combat on that mission. Red 3. During the Galactic Civil War, Biggs Darklighter, after joining the Imperial Academy, Biggs quickly defected to the side of the Rebellion. His skills quickly earned him a place on the squadron. When the Force brought Biggs' childhood friend Luke Skywalker to the Rebellion, he vouched for Luke's piloting skills and the two flew together against the Death Star. Biggs fought bravely, but was ultimately killed by Darth Vader. Ever in the mix, Wedge picked up this call sign when the slot of Red 2 was filled by another pilot. Jamin was a Duros pilot that joined Red Squadron after the Battle of Yavin. He flew alongside Luke and Wedge, but was killed in the Kayaks Nebula while battling pirates who were using modified TIE fighters. Sila Kott. A talented pilot in any ship, Kott preferred to fly transports. She wanted to fight for peace and justice, but didn't like the thought of taking a life. Wedge convinced her to join Red Squadron after the beating that the Rebellion took evacuating Hoth. Kot remained a part of Red Squadron for a while and even flew an A-Wing during the Battle of Endor. She died while attempting to lure TIE interceptors away from her wingmates. In time, the Sullustan pilot Nien Nunb, who was also an arms dealer and smuggler, was asked by his rebel pilot friend Yvon Verlaine to smuggle a group of Alderaanians after their planet was destroyed. This led to a chain reaction of Nunb working for the rebellion and eventually would join. He co-piloted the Millennium Falcon with Lando Calrissian during the Battle of Endor. After this battle, Nunb defended the planet Naboo from the Empire's destructive dying wish, Operation Cinder. He then joined the Resistance against the First Order and served as Red 3 in the Battle of Starkiller Base, Red 4 during the Galactic Civil War. In one BBY, McCain, a brave woman, intentionally crashed her ship into Darth Vader. Not Vader's ship, but Vader himself. Her fellow pilots celebrated briefly before realizing that Vader had somehow survived, and he was actually still combat ready. John D. Brannon. Part of the Massassi group, Brannon and some fellow pilots came down on Cole Takbright for his emotional outbursts, namely the one declaring that General Dodonna's plan to take down the Death Star was impossible. Brannon was killed in action defending Gold Squadron from the TIE fighters on the assault on the Death Star. Bella Alar. This Twi'lek pilot joined the squadron after the Battle of Yavin. She flew against pirates in the Kayaks Nebula after the evacuation of Hoth. Ilar's T-65B X-Wing had mechanical failure in deep space. She had to suit up and enter the vacuum of space to fix her ship or die. She would eventually be reunited with her wingmates. Having shown combat prowess and resolve, Wedge put her in charge of another assault on pirates. This time, they were threatening a rebel rendezvous point. During the time of the Resistance, Lieutenant Bastian flew under the callsign Red 4. He was one of Poe Dameron's wingmen on the assault on Starkiller Base and protected Poe during the assault. He survived the battle and would celebrate the Resistance after they struck this devastating blow against the First Order. Red 5 during the Galactic Civil War. Cole Takbright. Takbright is the Red 5 that never was. Check the channel for a full transmission all about Takbright, but pretty much his bad attitude caused him position after position under the callsign Red 5. Pedron Gall, the man who held the callsign that would eventually become known to everyone in the galaxy. Gall helped fugitives from the Empire escape Denon. This had him marked as a traitor. He was recruited into Red Squadron and died during the Battle of Scarif. Luke Skywalker took over the vacant callsign. His legendary act of firing the shot that destroyed the Death Star made Red 5 an infamous callsign. Grizz Free. After Skywalker vacated his position with Red Squadron, Free picked up the callsign. This was just after the Battle of Hoth. Free would fly with Red Squadron until his death during the Battle of Endor. He was something of a hothead and would lose sight of the larger picture to hunt down individual targets. Even with this, he was overall a solid pilot. Red 6. During the Galactic Civil War, Jek Tano Porkins. After the Empire built a military base on his homeworld of Bestine 4, Porkins joined the Rebel Alliance. He was originally stationed in the Expansion region and flew with the Tirfon Yellow Aces. When the Empire shut down Rebel efforts in that part of space, Porkins was reassigned to Yavin 4. He would become friends with Biggs Darklighter and join Red Squadron. Porkins flew as Red 6 in the Battle of Scarif, and then not long after in the Battle of Yavin. He was killed in combat during the assault on the Death Star. Derek Clivian was a standby for Porkins. Clivian defected from an Imperial Flight Academy alongside Wedge Antilles. Clivian was Porkins' standby for the Battle of Yavin. Disappointed he was grounded for the battle, Luke Skywalker invited him to join the newly formed Rogue Squadron during the Battle of Hoth. Clivian would crash his T-47 speeder into one of the Empire's walking tanks piloted by General Maximilian Veers. Wes Jansen. This pilot from Tanab would be an important part of Red Squadron, in the air and on the ground, assisting Wedge in recruiting and training when the latter was in charge. He was Wedge's gunner during the Battle of Hoth. He was originally supposed to fly as Red 6 in the Battle of Yavin, but Porkins was given the duty instead. Ix Ixtra. This hot-headed pilot spent 2 weeks in the brig at Echo Base on Hoth for hitting someone in the head with a metal tray. She was evacuated on a command ship when the Empire attacked. Figuring he could put her temper to use, Wedge recruited her to be part of Red Squadron. She died in combat soon after while fighting pirates at an Alliance rendezvous point. During the Resistance, there was an unnamed Resistance pilot who would use the callsign in the battle against Starkiller Base. Red 7 during the Galactic Civil War. Harb Binley. When Jyn Erso was collected and brought into the Alliance, she was delivered news about the Empire's superweapon, the Death Star. Binley believed Erso and wanted to take action, but Alliance Command denied it. When Alliance Command came around to the idea, Binley fought in the Battle of Scarif. His wingmate Pedringal died, but Binley survived. He would go on to fight in the Battle of Yavin, where he was killed in action. An unnamed pilot during the hijacking of the Harbinger flew under the callsign Red 7. Red 8 during the Galactic Civil War. Zal Din's, being a Tirfan native, she got her start in the Tirfan Yellow Aces. When the Empire shut down rebel activity in her sector, she was assigned to Yavin 4 with fellow pilot Jack Porkins. She joined up with Red Squadron and flew in the Battle of Scarif as well as Yavin. She was killed in action while assaulting the Death Star. Will Scotian. After fighting in and surviving the Battle of Hoth, Scotian was recruited by Wedge Antilles to join Red Squadron. He flew a T-65B X-Wing against pirates, where he lost his wingmate, Ix Ixtra. Scotian would eventually be named a flight leader, but I'm not clear on the details of that. Red 9 during the Galactic Civil War. Nazo Natan, a Corellian native. Nazo basically grew up flying. He was a test pilot for the Corellian Engineering Corporation. When the Empire took over, Nazo was told he'd now be testing TIE fighters for the Empire. He immediately fled and joined the rebellion. He fought in both the Battle of Scarif and Yavin, but was ultimately killed in action during that second encounter. An unnamed pilot during the hijacking of the Harbinger flew under the callsign Red 9. Pen Zowli. He was something of a risk-taking pilot. He spent his childhood years on hover sleds. Zowli joined the rebellion from an asteroid cluster on the edge of wild space. He was assigned to assist a medical droid since he never flown a starship or even used a training simulator. He constantly begged Wes Jansen for a spot to fly a real starfighter. After the Battle of Hoth, he got his chance. He flew against pirates as part of Red Squadron, but was killed in combat. Red 10 during the Galactic Civil War. Theron Net. A skilled, mature pilot, Net flew in the Battle of Yavin with wingmates Garven Dreis and Puck Nako. Net defended members of Gold Squadron as they attempted to bomb the Death Star's thermal exhaust port. With their attack unsuccessful, Net and his wingmates entered the trench for their own run. Net was killed by one of Vader's wingmates, known as Backstabber. Red 11 during the Galactic Civil War. Raylo Sorel. Raylo began his flying career as a stunt pilot. He would fly antique aircrafts in intricate ways to the delight of the Outer Rim crowds. When he joined the rebellion, his unique piloting skills were appreciated, and he was stationed on Yavin 4 and given a spot in Red Squadron. He was one of Red Leader's wingmates in the Battle of Scarif, where he shot down many TIE fighters. He filled the same role in the assault on the Death Star. Red Squadron was almost completely destroyed at the Battle of Yavin. Cole Tackbright, a grounded pilot in Alliance HQ, urged Sorel to flee. He refused. He dodged around the TIE fighters and took as many down as he could before they got him, buying precious time for Luke Skywalker to make his fateful shot. Red 12 during the Galactic Civil War. An unnamed pilot took up the callsign of Red 12 for the Battle of Scarif and was killed in action. Puck Nako, this long-serving pilot, served not only Red Squadron, but Green as well. He was equally proficient in an A-Wing as he was in an X-Wing. By the time the Battle of Yavin arrived, he was a double ace, meaning he had at least 10 confirmed combat kills. He was killed by Darth Vader in his TIE Advance X-1 during the Battle of Yavin. From what I can tell, that is the official canon roster of the history of Red Squadron. It's possible a name got lost in the shuffle over all the years of Legends and now canon storytelling. If I missed your favorite pilot, let me know and I'll be sure to fix the error. A handful of other names came up in my various readings. Some only appeared once or only in the oldest of Legend sources, so I left them out, but some are worth a closer look. Eliak Rue as Red 7, Bren Quirso as Red 8, and Wenton Chan as Red 11 are all Legends pilots, but were mentioned in the canon collection of short stories from a certain point of view. This book acknowledges the pilots as members of the squadron, but said they were grounded during the Battle of Yavin, presumably to a lack of ships. Attico Red, a former TIE pilot who fled the Imperial military when he refused to fire on a civilian ship, was part of Green Squadron. I read in one place that at one time he subbed into Red Squadron, but couldn't find specifics on that. He did have a friendly rivalry with Nazo Natan, Red 9, since the two were both from Corellia. Wyon Dillams was also a member of Green Squadron and had an insanely high kill count under his belt. Again, I read that at one time he was substituted into Red Squadron, but couldn't confirm it. The only canon mention of Red Squadron in Dillams' past is that Green and Red Squadrons, along with Gold, flew alongside each other in the Battle of Scarif. Most sources say Red Squadron had a roster of 12. Red 13, 14, and 15 were all referenced in Star Wars Battlefront from 2015. A reference book I thought would be cool, but from what I gather, needed a bit more fact-checking. Star Wars Super Graphic, a visual guide to a galaxy far, far away, references Red 16. Check out this transmission next for more explanations of Star Wars lore.